8. Richard Sigmund. 18-year-old college freshman Anna Jones was sitting in her car in a parking garage when she was fatally shot in July of 2022. Suspicion soon fell over 47-year-old Richard Sigmund, who worked as a professor at the University of West Georgia. Shortly before the shooting, Sigmund allegedly got drunk and got into an argument with another man at an Italian restaurant. He threatened to shoot the man, and when security guards noticed that Sigmund was armed, they asked him to leave. At that point, Sigmund went into the parking garage and began firing bullets. One of the bullets struck Jones. The victim's friends drove her to the hospital, where she was pronounced dead. While it appears as though Sigmund deliberately shot at Smith's vehicles, authorities determined that the two parties didn't have any interaction leading up to the incident. In other words, the young woman was unfortunately in the wrong place at the wrong time. The University of West Georgia immediately fired Sigmund following his arrest. But the loss of his job was trivial compared to the murder, aggravated assault, and gun charges he faces. 7. Brandon Schwartz. During the summer of 2022, campus security at Penn State University received a complaint from a female faculty member who accused 36-year-old Professor Brandon Schwartz of stalking her and trying to take inappropriate photos without her consent. She told a guard that she felt something hit the back of her foot, and when she turned around, she saw Schwartz standing closely behind her with his phone positioned suspiciously. The woman said that she first started noticing his bizarre behavior months before the most recent upskirt photo incident. She also reported that she often saw Schwartz lingering in the stairwell and soon began to suspect him of trying to see and take photos up her skirts and dresses. And it wasn't long after the first incident that she began feeling extra cautious around the biology professor. According to police, surveillance footage corroborated the woman's story. They claim to have found video evidence of Schwartz entering a building on at least 6 different occasions for stalking purposes, and he's accused of at least 15 separate incidents of stalking. When questioned by a campus officer one day, he denied following the woman. A search of the suspect's computer found internet searches for things like, "What is a peeping Tom?" "Living with a peeping Tom," "Common examples of voyeurism," and "What is voyeurism?" Schwartz also sent inappropriate text messages to a fellow staff member and had alarms set in his phone to enter a certain building at certain times, according to a criminal complaint. He also allegedly tried to figure out the woman's name through internet searches. And while no photos of her were found in his phone, detectives found evidence of deleted images on the device. Schwartz faces numerous charges, including stalking and invasion of privacy. His lawyer told the Center Daily Times that his client plans to fight the case on a not guilty plea, but declined to comment any further on the matter. 6. Karen Betez Halnan. Penn State sociology professor Dr. Karen Betez Halnan turned heads for all the wrong reasons during a flight from Nicaragua to Miami in 2015, when she erupted into a bizarre tirade about foreign policy that was captured on camera. In the midst of the unprovoked rant, which included claims that the U.S. had declared war on Venezuela, Halnan can be seen lighting a cigarette. At one point, an airline employee informed her that the police would be waiting to meet her when the plane landed. Halnan replied by saying that she already knew that, so she was going to say her piece anyway. Upon arriving in Miami, she was charged with disorderly conduct. Writing for Philly magazine shortly after the incident, Victor Fiorillo speculated that the disgraced professor's impromptu speech was in response to economic sanctions that then-President Barack Obama had recently imposed against Venezuelan leaders. But only Halnan herself really knew what was going through her mind at the time. That she knew she committed an act of civil disobedience, but that she felt that what she did was necessary. Halnan also accused the FBI and the TSA of torturing her. In an NBC interview, she said that she felt compelled to speak her opinion on American policy toward Venezuela. As far as her decision to light a cigarette on the plane goes, she said that every good revolutionary smokes, and that you have to have a sense of humor in that kind of situation. It's probably safe to assume that she did a better job at confusing and shocking people than conveying her point effectively. The arrest came just 2 years after Halnan pleaded guilty to public intoxication. Shortly after the story broke, a school official told the press that they were trying to figure out the next step in dealing with the matter. 5. Max Roland Reinhardt. 65-year-old Max Roland Reinhardt was working as a professor at the University of Georgia's Department of Germanic and Slavic Studies in 2012 when the Gwinnett County caught him moonlighting as a prostitute. He was busted in a sting after dressing in women's attire and agreeing to meet with an undercover detective for a discreet pay-to-play encounter. According to an arrest report, Reinhardt planned to meet with the undercover, who was posing as a John, for a half hour in exchange for $60. The police found Reinhardt through an escorting ad on the now-defunct Backpage website, advertising in the transsexual section as a worker named Sasha. In addition to the prostitution charge, Reinhardt was charged with keeping a place for prostitution. While this sounds like a charge for running a brothel, it just means that he allegedly rented a hotel room for the planned rendezvous. The day after the arrest, Reinhardt told Channel 2 News that the charge is not exactly what it appears. When it comes to deciding if a staff member who's in legal trouble gets to keep their job, the university's Office of Legal Affairs considers the circumstances of an employee's charges on a case-by-case basis. According to Vice President of Public Affairs Tom Jackson, who spoke with the Florida Times Union shortly after the arrest, officials ultimately decided against firing Reinhardt, even if he ended up being found guilty. Reinhardt met the 72-hour deadline for informing the school of the charges, and came clean about the incident shortly after bailing out of jail on a $4,800 bond. He agreed to retire by the following spring, which spared him from being fired and enabled him to end his career on a respectable note. In exchange for being allowed to keep his job until May 2013 and to avoid being considered terminated after leaving, Reinhardt promised not to sue the university. In many ways, it was an ideal agreement. The university managed to avoid the hassle of a court case over any disagreements related to Reinhardt's employment. The agreement also eliminated the need for any legal action Reinhardt might have otherwise been compelled to take against the school in order to walk away from his 20-year tenure respectably. 4. Hunter Fraser. They say not to mix your professional and personal lives, but when you work in certain fields, sometimes you have no say in whether that happens, which is why educators are wise to be careful about what happens behind closed doors. Take, for instance, Hunter Fraser, a Stanford University professor who was charged with domestic violence in September of 2022 over an incident that allegedly happened at his home in Santa Clara County, California, months earlier. Fraser is accused of throwing his girlfriend on the floor and then slamming a door on the woman while playing a game with her and his daughter. The incident reportedly left visible marks on the victim's body, resembling an imprint of the door. According to an arrest report, Fraser told a responding officer that he didn't know someone was behind the door until he opened it, and he claimed he was unaware of how hard he had pushed the door. In the meantime, his girlfriend sought medical care for injuries she allegedly sustained during the incident. The biology professor pleaded not guilty to the misdemeanor charge. According to court records, if convicted, he could serve up to a year in county jail. neither Stanford University nor FRASER responded to requests for comment from the Stanford Daily newspaper. In an email to students regarding the incident, Department Chair Martha Seart and Natural Sciences Senior Associate Dean Mary Beth Mudgett wrote that they can't comment on the external legal matter. County District Attorney's Office spokesperson Sean Webby said that FRASER was charged after they reviewed the case and determined that they've found enough evidence to prove the suspect's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. He wrote that he does not anticipate for the charge to be dropped. 3. David Pitts. In late 2014, someone set a chair and some bottles on fire in a Washington, D.C. parking garage. They then went to another part of the garage and lit some newspapers ablaze. After that, he started yet another fire in a wooded area. He then entered an office building with apparent plans to steal narcotics and prescription pads. But the police came in response to a call about a suspected burglary, and they caught the intruder at the scene. He was identified as 37-year-old David Pitts, who at the time was an American University professor and the chair of the college's Department of Public Administration and Policy. Unfortunately for Pitts, responding officers claimed that they witnessed him committing several crimes that night. Authorities would later allege that the suspect lit fires to gauge law enforcement's response times. A search of the man's apartment yielded more than 5,300 pills, along with blank prescription pads from at least 9 doctors' offices, according to the Washington Post. Pitts ultimately pleaded guilty to burglary and identity theft, and was sentenced to a year and 1 day in prison. As part of a plea deal, he managed to avoid arson-related convictions. He made this abundantly clear when he sued local media outlets in 2016 for falsely stating that he was in prison for setting fires. After serving his time, it appears as though Pitts put his experience behind bars to good use by joining the Urban Institute's Justice Policy Center as a senior research fellow. On his biography page, he states that he's seen firsthand the irreparable damage caused by incarceration. Considering America's undeniable prison-related problems, his dedication to improving the conditions for inmates across the country is certainly honorable. 2. Cynthia Marcello. Former professor Cynthia Marcello resigned from her position at the State University of New York, SUNY, Sullivan in early 2020. But it wasn't until late 2022 that she was charged with felony forgery for allegedly stealing more than $32,000 in grant money that was meant to provide learning opportunities for high-needs K-12 public school teachers. The 55-year-old is accused of forging the grant application without proper authorization and for personal profit in Fallsburg, New York, which is located near the Hudson River just a few hours north of New York City. Marcello's suspicious activity apparently caught the attention of fellow staff members at SUNY Sullivan, a 2-year college, while she was working there as a computer science professor. State authorities and local law enforcement worked together to investigate the allegations. They found that the college had applied for a grant that would enable the institution to partner with a local school district and give its teachers an opportunity to advance their professional skills. Marcello was supposed to receive between $1,000 and $3,000 for her participation in the program, but the entire amount went straight to her. She improperly listed herself as the vendor and invoiced the program from her personal address to redirect the funds away from where they were supposed to go. The arrest brought her 12-year SUNY teaching career to an end, which will amount to a much bigger monetary loss for her than the $32,000 she gained through her alleged dishonesty. 1. Julio PINO. Julio Cesar Pino had a long-running, successful career in academia. In addition to being a Fulbright scholar who was renowned for his research on poverty in Latin America, the Cuban-born intellectual held an esteemed position as a history professor at Kent State University in Ohio. Despite these accolades, Pino's opinions have landed him at the center of numerous controversies and ultimately got him fired from his job. Over the years, he's been accused of harboring anti-Semitic views, promoting armed jihadism, and even having possible ties to the Islamic State terrorist group, also known as ISIS. In early 2016, the FBI launched an investigation into the contentious academic. Pino denied having any connections to terrorism and said that he trusted the justice system to work like it was designed to and clear him of any wrongdoing. And for a while, it looked like things might pan out in his favor. But in 2018, he was charged with lying to the FBI during the investigation 2 years earlier. More specifically, the accusations related to his connections with a St. Louis man who had threatened to kill a family court judge and hundreds of people. Shortly after Pino's arrest, Kent fired him and banned him from its campuses. Later that year, he was sentenced to 5 months in federal prison. Thanks for watching. Would you rather see your favorite professor get arrested and fired over disturbing criminal allegations that made you unable to ever look at them the same way again? Or suffer through an entire year of full-time college classes with professors you can't stand? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.